Listen to me well, because what I am about to tell you changed my life forever. My name is Mauricio Sandoval. I am 71 years old. And until that Sunday, I thought I was living in my son's house out of charity. I thought I was an old man who was a bother, that I was eating someone else's bread. Oh, if only I had known the truth from the beginning, but no. I was a fool who remained silent for too long. It was Sunday, October 13th, to be exact. The sun was beating down hard on the backyard of the house in Zapopan, in that subdivision where the houses have large gardens and a garage for 2 cars. Roberto had lit the grill early on. The smell of grilled meat mixed with the smoke from the charcoal. I was sitting in my usual spot at the end of the white plastic table, watching my son flip the skirt steaks with those tongs I gave him for his birthday. Patricia had set the table nicely with those ceramic plates we bought for their wedding 15 years ago. We bought? No, I bought them because at that time Roberto was earning a pittance as a supervisor at the factory. But those details are forgotten now, aren't they? Favors of the past evaporate like smoke from the grill. The guests were Carlos and Monica, a married couple from the neighborhood. He works for an insurance company, and she is a primary school teacher. Decent people from one of those families that go to Mass on Sundays and greet their neighbors. They had arrived at 12 with a bottle of Herradura tequila and flowers for Patricia. I knew them only slightly. I had barely seen them at a couple of family gatherings. "Don Mauricio, how are you?" Carlos had asked me upon arriving, with a respect you almost don't see in young people anymore. "Fine, thank you. Always working," I answered him, because it's true. At 71, I still get up at 6 in the morning. I prepare breakfast for my grandchildren. I take them to school in my 2010 Nissan. I go to the market. I help around the house. I'm not one of those old men who sits around watching television all day. Monica asked about my health, about the grandchildren. Patricia answered for me, as she always does, as if I were deaf or mute. "He's fine, although he gets tired more quickly now," she said while placing the warm tortillas in the basket. I said nothing. I never say anything. I learned to be invisible in this house since I arrived 2 years ago. 2 years since my Estella died. 2 years since I sold the 3 workshops I built with these hands that smell of grease and work. 2 years living in the room that used to be for the maid, next to the garage. Because it's what's available, Papa. You know the house isn't that big. The grandchildren came running down. Daniela, 17, already a young lady with her cell phone glued to her hand, and Mateo, 14, skinny but intelligent like his grandfather. "Grandpa!" Mateo shouted, sitting down next to me. Daniela gave me a kiss on the forehead. She smelled of that expensive perfume I bought her last week. "Children, greet the guests first," Roberto told them, and they obeyed. I have good, well-educated grandchildren. That much I acknowledge. The food was good. Patricia knows how to cook, my Estella taught her when they were dating. Grilled meat, refried beans, guacamole with plenty of lime, just how I like it, and those salsas that are hot enough to burn stones. Roberto served Corona beer for everyone, even for me, although I prefer fresh hibiscus water. We chatted a little about everything. Carlos told jokes. Monica asked for the guacamole recipe. The children talked about school, about their teachers. Roberto and Patricia seemed happy, relaxed. I listened, nodded, laughed when it was time. My usual role. The grandfather who doesn't bother, who doesn't offer an opinion, who is grateful to be there. "And you two, aren't you thinking of traveling?" Monica asked Patricia. "We want to go to Puerto Vallarta in December." Patricia got excited. She was already on her 3rd beer, and her face had turned red. "Oh, we want to go to Cancun too." Roberto saw a great all-inclusive package online, but it's difficult with the expenses. "And is Don Mauricio going with you?" asked Carlos, turning to look at me with a smile. The silence lasted only a few seconds, but to me, it felt like an eternity. Patricia and Roberto looked at each other, and I saw something in their eyes that I didn't like. A look of complicity, of annoyance, like when children get caught in mischief. Then Patricia let out the words that broke my soul. "No, not him. He's staying. I'm tired of supporting your father, Roberto. He spends as if he had money, but he lives off of us. The 8,000 pesos he gives us isn't even enough for the electricity bill." My fork froze in the air. Halfway between the plate and my mouth, I felt as if a bucket of cold water had been thrown on me. Carlos and Monica looked down, uncomfortable. Daniela and Mateo fell silent, looking at me with those big eyes they inherited from their grandmother. But what hurt me most was what my son said, my Roberto, the boy I carried on my shoulders, whom I taught to drive, whose administration degree I paid for. She's right, Papa. We need to talk about your expenses. You bought new clothes last week. You spend on your expensive medicines. This money you give us isn't enough. This is our house, and here, our rules are followed. Our house, as if I were a stranger, as if the 8,000 pesos I give them every month were a handout and not my fair contribution, as if working for 55 years as a mechanic didn't give me the right to buy a new shirt or the pills for my blood pressure. Patricia, emboldened by her husband's support, continued, "Besides, you always leave the lights on. You use a lot of water. You eat as if it were free." As if it were free, I, who for 2 years have prepared breakfast for this family without being paid a single peso, I, who take and bring the grandchildren without asking for gas money, I, who help with the shopping, who fixes what breaks in the house, who has never raised his voice or made a sour face, I sat there, feeling my stomach clench, my mouth go dry. My eyes began to fill with tears, but I swallowed them. I was not going to cry in front of the guests. I was not going to give Patricia that satisfaction. Monica murmured something about the weather. Carlos cleared his throat and said the meat was very good. The grandchildren looked at me with sad faces, especially Mateo, who was very sensitive. But nobody said anything in my defense. Nobody. I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 71 years in my knees. I placed the napkin next to the plate, although I had barely tasted a bite. "Excuse me, well," I said with the calmest voice I could muster. "I'm no longer hungry." I walked towards my little room, the one that measures 3 by 4 meters, where I have my single bed, my small wardrobe, and the little table where I keep my important things. I closed the door without making a sound, sat on the bed, and stared out the small window that faces the garage. Outside, the meal continued, but without laughter now. I heard when Carlos and Monica left, early, without saying goodbye to me. I heard when Patricia cleared the dishes, muttering things I didn't want to understand. I heard when Roberto turned on the television to watch soccer. A normal life, as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't just stuck a knife in my heart in front of strangers. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed awake looking at the ceiling, thinking about everything. About the years I worked double shifts to pay for Roberto's studies. About the times I went without eating so he could have new sneakers. About the wedding I paid for. The honeymoon. The car I bought him when he got his first good job. I thought about my Estella, how proud she was of our son. "Roberto is a good boy, Mauricio. He will take care of us when we are old." Poor Estella. She died without seeing what her beloved boy had become. At 4 in the morning, I got up and turned on the lamp. I opened the wardrobe and took out the folder I keep at the very bottom, under the sheets I no longer use. The folder with all my important papers, the ones I have never shown Roberto because I thought it wasn't necessary. There were the deeds, the payment receipts, the contracts, all perfectly stored, all in order, all proving a truth that Roberto and Patricia did not know, that nobody knew, except me and my late Estella. A truth that was going to change everything because it turns out that the house where I live as a guest, the house where Roberto's rules are followed, the house where I am no longer welcome, I bought that house 5 years ago with the money from my work. Yes, my dear Roberto, your freeloader father, your father who spends as if he had money, your father who doesn't even contribute enough for the electricity. That father is the owner of the house where you live, and it was time for you to know it. With trembling hands, I opened the yellowish folder where I keep everything that really matters. Deeds, receipts, contracts. My entire life documented in papers that smell of time and secrets. There was the document that would change everything. Purchase and sale agreement. House located in the Jardines de Zapopan subdivision in Jalisco. Price, 2,800,000 Mexican pesos. Buyer, Mauricio Sandoval Herrera. Date, March 15, 2018. 5 years ago, when Roberto told me he had found the perfect house to start his marriage with Patricia. Papa, it's beautiful. It has 3 bedrooms, a large garden. It's in a very safe area, but it costs almost 3 million. We'll never be able to buy it. I remember his sad face, how Patricia cried because their dream of owning their own home had collapsed. What did I do? What any father does for his son. I sold one of my workshops, the one on Avenida Niños Héroes, the one that had cost me 10 years of work to build. I went to the Banorte Bank at Plaza del Sol, asked for the money in cash, and gave it to Roberto. It's your early wedding gift, my son. The house is yours. I'll put it in your name from the beginning. But now, sitting on my little bed in the maid's room, looking at these papers under the yellowish light of the lamp, I realize my mistake. I should have remained the owner. I should have thought about my future, but no, I believed in the movies where children take care of their parents out of love, not obligation. Do you know what the bank transfer receipt says? Concept, purchase of property for family gift. I signed it with my own hand, with the illusion of a father who believes his son will be eternally grateful. What a fool I was. Forgive the expression, but sometimes the truth hurts so much that only harsh words can express it. I closed my eyes and all the memories came rushing back, like when you open a water tap at full pressure. I saw myself at 16, a skinny kid with already calloused hands, arriving at Don Jesus Martinez's workshop in the sanitary neighborhood. Boy, if you want to learn this trade, you have to start from the bottom. You are going to clean tools, you're going to sweep, you're going to bring coffee, and if you show you're useful, I'll teach you. I worked with Don Jesus for 15 years earning a pittance, learning every secret of the engines, every trick to repair what other mechanics gave up for lost. 15 years saving peso by peso, storing the money for my dream in a Gamesa cookie tin, to have my own workshop. I achieved it at 31. Taller Sandoval said the blue sign I had painted. Callejón de la Independencia, number 234, Inalco neighborhood. A small, damp place with a dirt floor and used tools, but it was mine. I remember the first customer, Don Armando with his 1992 Tsuru that wouldn't start. I charged him 200 pesos. He paid me 250. For being the first, he told me. I kept those wrinkled bills as if they were gold. Roberto was born when I was 34. Maya Stella put him in my arms, all red and wrinkled like a little raisin. He looks just like you, Mauricio, she told me, crying with happiness. I looked at him and thought, this boy's going to have everything I didn't have. He's going to study. He's going to be a professional. He's not going to break his back like his father. And I kept my promise. When Roberto was 6 and needed shoes for school, I worked until 10 at night to pay for the flexi shoes he wanted so much. When he was cool and wanted a mountain bike, I sold my motorcycle to buy it for him. When he got to middle school and asked me to enroll him in Cervantes School, because that's where my friends go, I took on extra work on weekends. At 45, I opened the second workshop on Avenida 8 de Julio, bigger, better located. By then, I had 5 employees and a clientele that recommended me all over Guadalajara. Go with Mauricio Sandoval, they said. That one really knows how to fix cars. Roberto was already in high school, studying at UDG, very diligent. The third workshop came when I turned 52. Lopez Mateo Sur, the largest of all, with hydraulic lifts and computerized equipment. Talera Sandoval, specialist in automatic transmissions, said the ad I put on the radio. Roberto was already finishing his degree in business administration. Papa, when I graduate, I'll help you with the business, he used to say. But it never happened. He got a job in an auto parts company, earning well. He felt important with his desk and his tie. At 25, he told me he wanted to marry Patricia, a pretty, educated girl from a decent family in the Americana neighborhood. Papa, we want to have a nice wedding, but we need help. How much did I spend on that wedding? 180,000 pesos. The ballroom at the Hotel Presidente, the food for 200 guests, the mariachi Los Reyes, Patricia's dress, which alone cost 20,000 pesos. It's my only son's wedding, I explained to Estella when she saw the bank statement. I'm not going to hold back from giving him the best. She understood. My Estella always understood. Just don't end up with nothing, old man, she would tell me with that little smile she made when she scolded me with affection. 3 years later, Daniela, my first granddaughter, arrived. Roberto needed a bigger SUV for the family. Papa, I saw a used Suburban. It's very good, but they're asking for a 200,000 peso down payment. There I went again, taking from my savings. Then Mateo arrived, and again, Papa, we need to move. The apartment is too small for us now. And 3 years ago, when Roberto wanted to buy the BMW, he came to the workshop very nervous. Papa, the bank approved my credit, but I need a guarantor, someone who will be responsible for me if I can't pay. The debt was 480,000 pesos. I signed as a guarantor without thinking. He was my son, my blood. How could I not trust him? But everything changed when my Estela died. Pancreatic cancer took her in 6 months. From one day to the next, I was left alone in the house in the Ferrocarril neighborhood. The one we bought as newlyweds and where we raised Roberto. The walls closed in on me. Every corner reminded me of her. The workshop no longer excited me. I got up without enthusiasm. I ate once a day. Roberto and Patricia invited me to stay with them. Papa, you can't be alone. Come live with us. There's a little room next to the garage that you can fix up for yourself. I thought it was a son's love, genuine concern. I sold the 3 workshops for 4,200,000 pesos, a fortune for me. I thought, with this, I'm set for the rest of my life. I won't be a burden to anyone. But from the first day, they treated me like a visitor who stays too long. Papa, this room was the maid's. It doesn't have its own bathroom. You'll have to use the one downstairs. Papa, the children need to study in the afternoons. Try not to make noise. Papa, Patricia cooks for the family. If you want something special, you have to ask her in advance. And I, grateful. Thank you, son, for giving me a roof over my head. Don't worry about me, I'll adapt. Take these 8,000 pesos to help with expenses. I don't want to be a burden. 8,000 pesos, which to me was little but represented my dignity, my way of feeling that I was contributing. Now, with these documents in my hands, I understand everything. I was never a visitor in this house. I was never a freeloader. I never lived on charity. This house is mine. I bought it. I paid for it. I gave it to Roberto because I loved him, because I wanted to see him happy. But he believed it so much that he forgot where it came from. And the 4,200,000 pesos from the sale of the workshops are in my accounts at Banorte and HSBC. Roberto thinks his father lives on a measly social security pension. He doesn't know that his poor freeloader father has more money than he will earn in his entire life. Do you know what is the most painful? That for 2 years I believed their version of the story. I believed I was the poor grandfather who was a bother, who spent someone else's money, who contributed nothing. I got used to apologizing for existing, to doing everything in silence so as not to bother, to eating the leftovers without complaining. But Patricia's words at the meal woke me up. Supporting your father as if the 8,000 pesos I give each month were charity and not my collaboration. As if the breakfasts I prepare, the errands I run, the grandchildren I care for were worth nothing. As if 55 years of honest work gave me the right to nothing. Roberto said that this is his house, and technically he is right, because the deeds are in his name. But morally, humanly, this house is mine. I paid for it with my sweat, with my work, with the love I have for him. I gave it to him because I thought he would always respect me, that he would take care of me as I took care of him. I was wrong, and now it's time to correct my mistake. I put away the papers and took out my cell phone. I searched in my contacts for the number of Licenciado Hernandez, the lawyer who helped me when I sold the workshops. On the screen, it said, Licenciado Hernandez, Legal Services. It's 4:30 in the morning. In 5 hours, I'm going to call him and ask him something I already suspect, something I learned when I processed the donation of this house. In Mexico, donations can be revoked for the ingratitude of the recipient. Roberto and Patricia are going to learn a lesson I should have taught them a long time ago. They are going to learn that respect is not begged for, it is earned. They are going to learn that gratitude is not optional, it is mandatory. They are going to learn that humiliating the one who gave you everything has consequences. And I am going to recover my dignity, even if it's the last thing I do in this life. At 5:30 in the morning, I got out of bed without making a sound. I had slept for 2 hours, maybe 3, but my body could no longer stay still. Ideas were churning in my head like boiling water, a perfect plan that had formed on its own during the early morning. It wasn't revenge I felt. Understand me well. It was something deeper, cleaner, justice. I took a cold shower in the shared bathroom, trying not to wake anyone. Then I opened my small wardrobe and took out the navy blue suit I hadn't worn since Estella's funeral. The same one I used to wear when I went to sign important contracts, when I closed deals for hundreds of thousands of pesos. When I was Mauricio Sandoval, the businessman, not the freeloader grandfather. The white shirt still smelled of the cedar closet, the red tie with small golden figures, a gift from Estella for our 30th anniversary. The leather shoes I bought at Plaza del Sol when I opened the third workshop, polished like mirrors. I saw myself in the small wardrobe mirror and recognized the man I had been, serious, determined, respectable. The house was silent. Roberto and Patricia were sleeping in their master bedroom, the one with its own bathroom, with a whirlpool tub that I installed when I bought the house. The grandchildren were also sleeping, oblivious to the earthquake that was coming. I tiptoed out, closed the door without a sound, and started my Nissan without revving the engine much so as not to wake the neighbors. The streets of Zapopan were almost empty, a few ladies coming out of the 6 o'clock mass, a couple of bread trucks making their morning rounds. The cold October air hit my face when I rolled down the window. I felt different, renewed, like when you take a heavy burden off your shoulders. Licenciado Hernandez's office was in the Plaza de los Mariachis, on the second floor of a colonial building painted yellow. I arrived at 7:10 and waited in the car, watching the plaza fill up with merchants setting up their stalls, musicians with their guitars, flower vendors, early tourists with their cameras. The normal life of a city that didn't know that Mauricio Sandoval was about to change his story. At 8 o'clock sharp, I went up the pink marble stairs. The secretary, a young girl with glasses, greeted me with surprise. "Don Mauricio, what a miracle to see you here. The lawyer doesn't arrive until 8:30. "I'll wait for him," I told her, sitting in one of the leather chairs. "It's urgent." The girl offered me coffee. I accepted, although my hands were shaking, and I knew the caffeine would make my nerves worse. But I needed to keep busy. I needed time to pass faster. In my brown leather briefcase, the one I use for important meetings, I carried all the documents. Deeds, receipts, contracts, my entire life in sealed and signed papers. Licenciado Hernandez arrived at 8:15. A man my age, gray-haired, well-combed, in an impeccable gray suit. We had known each other for 15 years. He had handled all my legal affairs, the purchase of the workshops, the contracts with suppliers, the final sale of the business. "Mauricio, what a surprise! How is the family?" "The grandchildren are fine. The family is as it is, licenciado. That's why I'm here." In his office, surrounded by bookcases full of civil codes and volumes of jurisprudence, I told him everything. Every detail of Sunday, every word from Patricia, every gesture from Roberto. The lawyer listened to me attentively, taking notes in his leather notebook. "Don Mauricio, let me see the donation documents." I handed him the complete folder. He reviewed paper by paper with the meticulousness of someone who has seen many similar marriages. Then he took off his glasses and looked at me intently. "Don Mauricio, according to the Civil Code of the State of Jalisco, Article 1942, a donation can be revoked for ingratitude of the recipient when he commits acts that show a lack of recognition towards the donor. Do you have witnesses to what happened?" My son's friends heard everything. Carlos Mendez and his wife Monica and my grandchildren were also present. Were there other situations of mistreatment before? I told him about the 2 years of silent humiliations, the constant slights, the house rules that treated me like an unwanted visitor, the way Patricia ignored me as if I were an old piece of furniture. "Sufficient," said the lawyer, closing the folder. "This constitutes notorious ingratitude according to the code. The process may take between 3 and 6 months, but we can start it immediately. We can also request a precautionary measure so that you can return to the house if you wish." "I don't want to return, licenciado. I want them to learn their lesson. I want them to know what it's like to lose what they took for granted." "I understand. What else can I do for you?" I need you to prepare all the papers today, and I need you to recommend a trustworthy notary. I left the office at 9:15 with an appointment for 4 in the afternoon. The lawyer was going to have all the documents ready. He also gave me the phone number of a public notary he trusted, in case I needed to make any changes to my will or powers of attorney. My next stop was the Banorte Bank at Plaza del Sol, where I've had my main account for 20 years. I arrived just as they were opening the doors. The manager, Licenciada Sandoval, curiously the same last name as me, though no relation, greeted me with that professional kindness they reserve for clients with important accounts. Don Mauricio, how can we help you? I need to make several important transactions. First, I want to withdraw 500,000 pesos in cash. She blinked in surprise. That's a considerable amount, Don Mauricio. Are you sure? We can handle it with bank transfers or cashier's checks. In cash, I repeated. And I also need information about a car loan where I appear as a guarantor. She asked me to wait while she checked the system. 5 minutes later, she returned with a folder and a worried look. Don Mauricio, you do indeed appear as a guarantor on a loan for 480,000 pesos in the name of Roberto Sandoval Vasquez. The current balance is 320,000 pesos. And is there a problem? I want to withdraw my guarantee today. The manager turned pale. Don Mauricio, if you withdraw the guarantee, the bank is obliged to notify the credit holder and demand that he present a new guarantor or pay off the entire debt within a period of no more than 30 days. If he does not comply, we will proceed to seize the vehicle. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. Are you sure your son could lose the car? My son is going to lose many more things if he doesn't learn to value what he has. I stayed at the bank until 11 in the morning, filling out forms, signing documents, waiting for them to process the withdrawal of the guarantee. I put the 500,000 pesos in cash in a briefcase I asked to borrow. I had never carried so much cash, but I needed it to feel the weight of my decision, to remind myself that I was not the poor old man they thought I was. From the bank, I called HSBC, where I have my second account. I want to close the account and transfer all the money to Scotiabank, I told them. 3,700,000 pesos, the rest of the sale of my workshops. I can come this afternoon at 2. My last stop of the morning was Scotiabank, at a branch on the other side of the city in Plaza Patricia. I wanted my accounts to be far away, where Roberto couldn't easily find them. I opened 2 new accounts, a checking and an investment account. I deposited the 500,000 pesos in cash and arranged the transfer of the money from HSBC. Don Mauricio, the account executive, asked me, "May I ask why you are moving all your resources to our bank?" "Family problems," I replied. "Sometimes you have to protect yourself from your own blood." The man nodded with understanding. He had probably seen everything in his job. I returned home at 2:30 in the afternoon. My Nissan sounded different, as if it also knew that things had changed. On the way, I bought 2 large suitcases at Liverpool and Plaza del Sol. If I was going to leave, I was going to do it with dignity. Roberto was at work, the children at school. Only Patricia was at home, in sweatpants and flip-flops, watching her afternoon soap opera. When I entered with the suitcases, she looked at me with curiosity, but said nothing. She still wasn't speaking to me after Sunday's incident. In my little room, I began to pack methodically. Clothes in one suitcase, important documents in my briefcase, memories of Estella in a shoebox, photos of Roberto when he was a child, letters he wrote me when he was in college, drawings the grandchildren had made for me. Patricia passed by the window several times, spying on me. Finally, she couldn't resist her curiosity and knocked on my door. "Don Mauricio, are you all right?" "Perfectly," I replied without looking at her. "I've never been better." "Are you traveling?" "Something like that." "When are you coming back?" Then I did turn around and looked her in the eyes. "I'm not coming back, Patricia. I'm leaving for good." She was quiet for a moment, processing the information. "Because of Sunday?" "Because of many things. Because of 2 years of many things." "Don Mauricio, I was drunk. I didn't mean to." "Yes, you did," I interrupted her. "The thing is, you never thought there would be consequences." She left without another word. I heard her talking on the phone, surely calling Roberto, but I no longer cared. In 4 hours, I had an appointment with the lawyer. In a few weeks, they would receive the lawsuit for revocation of donation. In a month, Roberto would lose the BMW and I would recover my dignity. At 5 in the afternoon, I closed the suitcases. Everything important was in there. A life of 71 years reduced to 2 suitcases and a briefcase. But I felt free, freer than I had felt in years. Patricia was in the kitchen when I left with the suitcases. She didn't say goodbye. I didn't say goodbye to her either. I put the suitcases in the Nissan and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw the house for the last time. The house I bought with my money, that I paid for with my work, that I gave away for love, and that I was now going to recover for justice. Roberto and Patricia were going to learn that in life, you pay for everything, and that humiliating the one who gave you everything is the most expensive mistake you can make. Roberto arrived from work at 6:30. As always, I heard when he closed the door of his BMW, when he greeted Patricia in the kitchen, when he poured himself a glass of water. The familiar sounds of a house that was no longer my home. I waited for him to go in to change his clothes, to see the suitcases on my bed, to understand that something had changed forever. I didn't have to wait long. 10 minutes later, he appeared at the door of my room, still in his work shirt with his tie loosened at the neck. His face showed confusion, like a child who doesn't understand why his favorite toy is broken. "Papa, what are you doing?" I continued folding my last shirt, the one Daniela had given me for Father's Day. "I'm leaving, Roberto." "Where are you going?" "To a place where they respect me." He stood in the doorway as if he couldn't process my words. Roberto had always been slow to understand emotional situations. Since he was a child, when his mother got angry with him, it took him hours to realize what he had done wrong. "Papa, don't exaggerate. Patricia was drunk on Sunday. She didn't mean to say that." "And you, Roberto? Were you also drunk when you said this is your house?" For the first time in 2 years, I saw him get uncomfortable. He put his hands in his pockets, looked at the floor, cleared his throat like he did as a child when I scolded him for his grades. "Papa, I just wanted to support my wife. You know how women are sometimes." "Don't blame her," I interrupted, closing the suitcase with a slam. "You said your own words. You talked about your rules in your house. You treated me as if I were a nuisance." At that moment, his cell phone rang. The ringtone he had was from Los Tigres del Norte, La Jaula de Oro. How ironic, I thought. Roberto looked at the screen and frowned. "It's from the bank," he muttered. "How strange, it's late for commercial calls." He answered with that professional voice he used for work. "Hello, Roberto Sandoval." From where I was, I could hear the conversation. A female voice, formal, polite, but firm. It was the manager from Banorte. "Mr. Sandoval, we are calling to inform you that the guarantor of your car loan has withdrawn their guarantee as of today. You need to present a new guarantor or pay off the full balance of 320,000 pesos within a period no longer than 30 business days. Otherwise, we will proceed with the seizure of the vehicle." I saw how Roberto's face changed color from tan to a pale yellow. His eyes widened like saucers. "What? But my dad is the guarantor. There must be a mistake." "There is no mistake, Mr. Sandoval. Your father, Don Mauricio Sandoval Herrera, came personally this morning to withdraw his guarantee. The documents are already processed and registered." Roberto looked at me intently while he spoke, with a mixture of panic and confusion. "Can they do that without notifying me?" "We are notifying you now, sir. You have 30 business days starting tomorrow. We are sending the official notification by certified mail. Have a good day." The call ended. Roberto was left with the phone in his hand, looking at it as if it were a strange object. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. "Papa," he finally said, his voice breaking. "What did you do?" "What I should have done a long time ago. I recovered my dignity." "But they're going to take my car." "No, Roberto, they are going to take your car. The car you bought with my guarantee, thinking you had a right to my money forever." Patricia appeared at the door. She had heard the shouting. She came drying her hands on a kitchen towel, with that expression of a woman who knows something serious is happening. "What's going on here? Why are you shouting?" Roberto looked at her with desperation. "Patricia, my dad withdrew the guarantee for the car. The bank is going to repossess the BMW if I don't get 320,000 pesos in a month." Patricia turned even paler than Roberto. The BMW was her pride, the way she presented herself to her friends in the subdivision. Without it, they would have to go back to the old Suru they had stored in the garage. Don Mauricio, she said with a trembling voice, why did you do that? We have never disrespected you. Really, Patricia? I looked her directly in the eyes. Is that what you said on Sunday? That you had never disrespected me? She looked down. She knew perfectly well what I was referring to. Roberto also understood because he turned even paler. Papa, we already apologized. No, I corrected him. You have not apologized to me. You are asking me not to face consequences for having humiliated me. I went to my wardrobe, took out my leather briefcase and put it on the bed. Carefully, like someone handling sacred relics, I took out the yellowish folder where I keep all my important documents. Patricia and Roberto watched me without understanding, but something in my attitude made them nervous. I walked to the small table I use as a desk and spread out the papers like a fan. Deeds, receipts, contracts, proof of bank transfers. My whole life documented in official seals and notarized signatures. Patricia, Roberto, come here. I want to show you something. They approached slowly like someone approaching a snake that could strike at any moment. I took the main document, the deed to the house, and placed it in the center of the table. This house, I said in a slow, clear voice without a tremor, I bought it 5 years ago. 2,800,000 pesos. Here are the original deeds. Roberto leaned in to read the document. I saw his eyes scan the lines, looking for some mistake, some explanation that wasn't the obvious one. Patricia also leaned in, reading over her husband's shoulder. Here are the payment receipts, I continued, placing a stack of bank slips on the table. Banorte, electronic transfer, March 15, 2018, 2,800,000 pesos exactly. Here is the original purchase agreement, I added, showing another paper. Mauricio Sandoval Herrera, buyer. Inmobiliaria Casas y Terrenos de Occidente, seller. And here, I said, placing the last document, is the donation deed I signed when I gave it to Roberto out of love, out of generosity, out of stupidity. The silence in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Roberto's mouth was open. Patricia had placed a hand on her chest as if she couldn't breathe. Papa, Roberto stammered, I didn't know. You told me it was a wedding gift. And it was, I confirmed, but a gift can be taken away when the one who receives it becomes ungrateful. Patricia found her voice first. Don Mauricio, we didn't know any of this. Roberto always thought you had helped us with the down payment, but that we had paid the rest. Really? I looked at her with sarcasm. Roberto paid 2,800,000 pesos with his manager's salary. Do you think I'm an idiot, Patricia? Roberto collapsed into the only chair in my room. He looked as if he had been hit in the head with a hammer. Papa, what do you want us to do? We get it. We know we were wrong. Tomorrow morning, my lawyer is going to start a process of revocation of donation for ingratitude. You will receive the official lawsuit in a week. Patricia let out a choked cry. You can't do that. This is our house. My children live here. This is my house, I corrected her firmly. I paid for it. I gave it to Roberto, and I am going to get it back when the judge confirms that you did not deserve my generosity. Roberto shot up from the chair as if on springs. Papa, you can't do that. Where are we going to live? What's going to happen to Daniela and Mateo? You should have thought about that before calling me a freeloader in front of your friends. But we didn't know the house was yours. Exactly, I shouted for the first time in 2 years. You didn't know anything. You didn't know that the 8,000 pesos I give you every month come from my money, not from a miserable pension. You didn't know that the car you show off so much is guaranteed by my assets. You didn't know that the freeloader old man who gets in your way has more money than you will earn in your entire lives. Patricia began to cry, but they were not tears of remorse. They were tears of panic from a woman who has just realized that her world is about to collapse. Don Mauricio, please think about it. We can change. We can treat you better. It's too late for that, Patricia. I've already made my decision. At that moment, the grandchildren arrived from school. I heard them opening the front door, shouting their usual greetings. Mama, we're home. Grandpa, where are you? Daniela appeared first at my door in her high school uniform, her backpack slung over her shoulder. Seeing the suitcases in our faces, she immediately understood that something serious was happening. Grandpa, are you leaving? Yes, my girl, I said. I'm leaving. Mateo came running after his sister. When he saw the scene, he froze at the door. Why are you leaving, Grandpa? Did we do something wrong? My heart broke. These children were not to blame for anything. They had always treated me with affection and respect. But their father needed to learn a lesson, and sometimes the lessons hurt the whole family. No, my children, you never did anything wrong. I love you very much, so much. But your father needs to learn a very important lesson about respect and gratitude. What lesson? Asked Danielos, who at 17 understood more than she let on. I looked at Roberto and Patricia, who were avoiding my gaze. The lesson that everything in life is earned and lost, that nothing is forever if you don't take care of it. That humiliating the one who gave you everything is the most expensive mistake you can make. Grandpa, don't go, pleaded Mateo, hugging my waist. We do love you. We do respect you. The tears came out without permission. I hugged my grandchildren with all the strength I had. I memorized their smell, the feel of their hair, the way they clung to me as if they could stop time. I'll see you soon, I lied to them. When your father understands what he did wrong, when he learns to value what he has, we will see each other again. Do you promise? Daniela asked with a broken voice. I promise, my girl. I took the suitcases and my briefcase. Roberto followed me to the front door, still in a state of shock. Papa, please don't do this. We can solve it by talking. I worked for 45 years to buy you a house. I lived humiliated in my own house for 2 years. The time for talking is over, Roberto. I loaded the suitcases into my Nissan while the neighbors spied from their windows. They had surely already realized that something dramatic was happening in the Sandoval family. Before getting into the car, I looked one last time at the house. The pink quarry stone facade, the garden I had designed myself, the automatic gate I installed to make it safer. My house, the house I bought with the sweat of 50 years of work, that I gave away for love, and that I was now going to recover for dignity. Roberto stood on the sidewalk watching me drive away. In the rearview mirror, I saw Patricia hugging the grandchildren at the door. Everyone crying. I saw the neighbors peeking out with curiosity. I saw my life of the last 2 years disappear like smoke. But for the first time in a long time, I felt free. 3 months later, the judge of the Second Family Court of Guadalajara delivered the verdict. Carlos and Monica testified about what they had heard at the Sunday meal. Daniela, crying, confirmed the exact words of her mother and father. Licenciado Hernandez presented a perfect case with jurisprudence and articles from the Civil Code that left no room for doubt. The revocation of donation for ingratitude proceeds when the recipient commits acts that demonstrate a lack of recognition towards the donor, the judge read. In this case, calling the donor of the house where he lives a freeloader, declaring that he lives on charity when in fact he contributes financially to the household, and publicly humiliating him in front of third parties constitutes notorious ingratitude, according to Article 1942 of the Civil Code of the State of Jalisco. The sentence was decisive. The donation was revoked. The house returned to my ownership. Roberto and Patricia had 60 days to vacate the property. The BMW was also taken away. Roberto found neither a new guarantor nor the 320,000 pesos. A tow truck from the bank took it away on a Tuesday morning while the neighbors watched from their windows, and Patricia cried in the kitchen. Cold legal justice, but justice nonetheless. A year later, I wake up every morning to the sound of the Caribbean Sea crashing against the white sand of Playa del Carmen. Do you know what it feels like to live like this? Like being born again at 72. My apartment is on the 5th floor of a coral-colored building with huge windows that look directly out onto the turquoise water. From my bed, I can see the fishermen's boats leaving before dawn, like hard-working little ants who know no resentment. I sold the house in Zapopan for 3,200,000 pesos. The price went up. Imagine that. The economic crisis made real estate values soar, and I thought I had lost money by giving it to Roberto. Sometimes justice comes with unexpected rewards. With that money, I bought this two-bedroom apartment facing the sea for the 800,000. I had enough money left over to live comfortably for the rest of my life, but complete tranquility bored me. A man who worked for 55 years can't just sit around watching television all day, no matter how beautiful the view is. So I looked for something to do with my hands, something to remind me of who I am at heart. Mauricio Sandoval, a mechanic by heart. I found a small place 2 blocks from the beach on Avenida Constituyentes. I rent it for 8,000 pesos a month, almost the same as I used to give a Roberto for household expenses. The irony of life, isn't it? The sign says Taller Sandoval, marine engine repair, specializing in outboards. Boat engines, diving equipment, work I knew little about but learned quickly because the basics are the same. Metal, fuel, sparks, and a lot of patience. 3 days a week I open the workshop. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. It's not for the money, you understand. It's for the satisfaction of fixing what others have given up on. The local fishermen bring me their engines, Johnson and Yamaha, when no one else wants to touch them. Don Mauricio, they tell me, you're the only one who works miracles on these machines. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I spend my time walking on the beach, reading books I never had time to read when I worked so much. On Saturdays, I go to the seafood market and buy fresh fish to cook. On Sundays, I sit on my balcony with a very cold beer and watch life go by. There's no rush, no schedules to meet, no one to treat me like a nuisance. And Roberto, Patricia, the grandchildren? For 9 months, I heard nothing from them. Daniela would send me messages from time to time. Grandpa, we miss you. Grandpa, when are you going to visit us? I would reply with love, but without making any promises. I love you very much, my girl. Take care. Through Daniela, I found out how they were doing after losing the house. They moved to a rented apartment in the Moderna neighborhood near Roberto's work. 80 square meters instead of the 250 they had in my house. 2 bedrooms instead of 4. 1 shared bathroom instead of 3. Patricia had to find a job as a receptionist at a dental clinic, earning 12,000 pesos a month. Roberto was still at his company, but now he walked to work because he lost the BMW and they couldn't afford another car. Dad is very quiet, Daniela wrote to me. Mom cries a lot. Mateo asks about you every day. Messages that hurt me, but did not make me change my mind. Roberto had to learn the whole lesson, not just half of it. The change came on a Thursday morning in September. I was in the workshop with my hands inside a 40-horsepower Suzuki engine that wouldn't start. It smelled of burnt oil and sea salt that seeps through all the cracks in this town. Suddenly, I heard a familiar voice from the entrance. Don Mauricio? I looked up, and there was Roberto. But not the Roberto I knew. This man looked 10 years older, thin, with deep dark circles under his eyes and cheap clothes. He was no longer the proud manager with a starched shirt and polished shoes. He was someone who had been broken by life, and he knew it. Papa, he said, his voice trembling. Forgive me. I wiped my hands on the greasy rag and looked at him intently. For 9 months I had waited for this moment, but now that it had arrived, I didn't know what to feel. Triumph, pain, relief. What did you learn, Roberto? He was silent for a long minute, looking at the oil-stained concrete floor. When he looked up, I saw tears in his eyes. I learned that I never valued what I had, that I thought I was the owner of something you gave me out of love, that I humiliated the man who gave me everything in life. What else? I learned that my children lost respect for me when they saw how I treated their grandfather, that Patricia also sees me differently, as if I weren't the man she married, that without your support, without your money, without your silent help, I am nobody. The words hit me like punches. It was what I wanted to hear, but it hurt just the same. Seeing your son broken is not easy, even if he broke himself. How did you find me? Daniela gave me your address. I paid for the bus from Guadalajara to Cancun, then a taxi here. I spent the last of my savings. And does Patricia know you came? Yes, she was the one who told me I had to come, that it was time to swallow my pride and ask for your forgiveness on my knees if necessary. I stood there thinking, looking at my son turned into a humble stranger. This was what I had wanted to achieve with my justice. But now that I had it in front of me, I didn't know if I liked the result. Roberto, I'm going to make you a proposal. You can accept it or leave as you came. Whatever, Papa, whatever you say. You come to work here with me for 6 months. You learn the marine engine business from scratch. Every peso you earn working with me, you use to pay off the BMW loan you still owe. I teach you. You work. You pay your debt with your sweat. Roberto's eyes widened in surprise. You're going to help me get the car back? I'm going to teach you how to earn it back, which is very different. Where will I live? In the service room of my apartment. It's small with a single bed and a shared bathroom, like the room you put me in at your house. He understood the lesson immediately and lowered his head. I deserve it. Do you accept the conditions? I accept everything, Papa, whatever is necessary. The next 6 months were a transformation I never thought I would see. Roberto arrived in Playa del Carmen that same Thursday with a small suitcase full of used clothes. He settled into the small service room of my apartment without complaining about the tight space or the heat in there. The first day at the workshop was a disaster. Roberto didn't even know how to hold a wrench properly. His office hands were soft, white, without calluses. After 10 minutes, he was sweating as if he had run a marathon. Papa, how do you disassemble this carburetor? The way I taught you when you were 15, and you didn't pay attention because you thought you were going to be a manager your whole life. Little by little, day by day, week by week, I saw my son transform. His hands hardened, filled with calluses and small scars. His skin turned brown from working with the workshop door open under the Caribbean sun. The muscles in his arms became defined from carrying heavy engines. But the most important change was not physical. It was in his attitude. The arrogant manager who thought he owned everything became a humble apprentice who was grateful for every lesson. When he didn't understand something, he asked. When he made a mistake, he apologized. When I corrected him, he listened attentively. Papa, can you show me again how to calibrate the spark timing? Of course, son, but pay attention this time. The fishermen who came to the workshop were initially suspicious of Roberto. This white-collar guy knows how to fix engines? But when they saw how he worked, how he got his hands dirty, how he didn't give up even if he had been struggling with the same problem for hours, they began to respect him. Don Roberto, Pancho, an old fisherman who brought his boat every month, would say, "You're learning the trade now. Your hands look like a worker's." Roberto would smile with pride, the same pride he used to feel for his expensive suits and his BMW, but now it was earned pride, not a gift. In the afternoons, after closing the workshop, we would walk on the beach and talk about everything we had never talked about. His childhood, his mistakes, how he had confused having things with deserving respect. Papa, when I was a kid, you were always working. I thought you gave me money because it was your obligation, not because it cost you sacrifices. Children always think that, Roberto. It's normal. But children who grow up well learn to value those sacrifices when they become parents. I never learned. You're learning now. Every 2 weeks, Roberto would collect his salary from the workshop and send it to the bank to pay the BMW loan. Not much, 3,000 pesos every 2 weeks, but consistently. He borrowed money from me for the bus fare to go see his family once a month. Patricia and the grandchildren would come to visit him every 2 months. They would stay the weekend in a cheap hotel in the area. Daniela told me that her father had completely changed. Grandpa, he's not the same as before. He's more humble, more grateful. Mom says he seems like a different man. Patricia changed too. The proud woman who had called me a freeloader now apologized every time she saw me. Don Mauricio, I know I have no forgiveness from God for what I said, but I want you to know that I regret it every day. Forgiveness is earned, Patricia. Roberto is already earning it. You can too. The 6 months were up in March, exactly 1 year after I left their house. Roberto had paid 130,000 pesos of the BMW loan. He still owed almost 200,000. But the bank agreed to reactivate the loan when Roberto got a new guarantor, his boss at the company where he still worked. The last day Roberto worked with me in the workshop, we assembled a 75 horsepower Evinrude engine together that had arrived in pieces. We worked in silence, each knowing perfectly what to do, like a team that has been working together for years. When the engine started on the first pull, Roberto smiled with a satisfaction I had never seen in him. Papa, I have never felt so proud of something I did with my own hands. Now you understand what it is to earn things, right? Yes, Papa, I finally understand. I closed the workshop that afternoon and we sat on my balcony to watch the sun set over the Caribbean Sea. Roberto had calloused hands, sun-tanned skin, the clear gaze of someone who has paid his debts. Roberto, now you deserve my respect again. Thank you, Papa. And when I die, this time you will inherit. But now you know why. Because I earned it. Exactly. Because you learned that everything in life is earned with work, with sacrifice, with humility. That respect is not a birthright. It is a daily conquest. That gratitude is not weakness. It is strength. Roberto went back to Guadalajara the next day. He got his BMW back, paying the loan religiously every month. Patricia continued to work, but now for pleasure, not out of necessity. The grandchildren write to me often, send me photos, tell me about school, and I am still here in Playa del Carmen, working 3 days a week in my marine engine workshop, enjoying the sea the other 4 days, free, calm, respected, with the satisfaction of having taught the most important lesson of my life, that love without limits creates ungrateful children, but love with consequences creates good men. Mauricio Sandoval, 73 years old, retired mechanic, proud grandfather, teacher of life, finally at peace. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to our channel, Whispers of Experience, for more tales of life, loss, and the lessons learned along the way.